What's going on, everybody? If you're watching this video, welcome to contact phase of Blackhawks. That's what we're going to talk about in this phase. You're done with academics and you're on to actually flying the Blackhawk. So in ground school of Blackhawks, you spend an entire month of front loading academics and you're done with it. You've taken 3 tests and you're moving on to contact phase, and it's time to fly that Blackhawk. So let's talk about it. Like I said, contact phase is the first flying phase of Blackhawks, and you'll be back at the stage fields. So just like P1 and P2 of Common Core, you're back at the stage fields doing pretty much exactly what you did in P1 and P2 of Common Core, but you're back doing it in a Blackhawk. So it's a lot more fun. Now, you're done with academics, but you have the 5 and 9 exam, also known as the Emergency Procedures and Limits exam of the -10 for day 1 of contact phase. You take it right off the bat before you even get to touch the aircraft. You will be taking that test and you will be expected to make at least a 90% on the exam. Fortunately for you guys, I got some good tips. So whenever I went through, which wasn't that long ago, but you know, flight school has been known to change things up. Whenever I went through, we took the 5 and 9 exam on Blackboard. Now, you got a practice exam, and then you got the real exam. So the practice exam, you could take on your own as many times as you wanted to. And the practice exam would be a 60-question exam that would pull from a pool of 500 questions. Don't quote me on that. It was like 500, 600 questions of possible questions you'll get on the real exam. So the trick was you took that practice exam over and over and over and over and over again, and you took it so many times that hopefully you had seen all the possible questions that will be on the real test. And I literally took that thing so many times, I knew it so well that I didn't even have to read the question. I immediately could recognize the question on just based on what it looked like, and I knew the answer to it. That's how many times I took that practice exam. So whenever I got down to day 1 of contact, which was the day you take your 5 and 9 exam, I freaking aced it, 100%. I didn't give them an opportunity to roll me back, because that's what's going to happen if you don't receive at least a 90%. I think you get one more chance for a retake the very next day. You don't get to fly that day at all. You have to go home and study, and you come back and retake it. And the highest they're going to give you is a 70, because that's going to also affect your GPA for the course. So yeah, don't even entertain that idea. Take the practice exam over and over and over again and freaking ace that crap. That's my tip for 5 and 9. Now, when you guys go through, it may be the same way. It may be written. Who knows? If it's written, they also have a written exam that you can download off of Blackboard, and I'd advise just taking that on your own as many times as you possibly can. Obviously, the written exam is going to be harder than the multiple choice, but you can do it. When you get to your actual unit, you're going to do a written exam. It ain't going to be multiple choice. So why they elected to do the multiple choice at flight school, I don't know. I don't make the rules, but I wasn't complaining about it. Let's just say that. So for the remainder of flight school, once you're in contact phase, no more academics. So that is a huge benefit in going to Blackhawks. It's not like Common Core. In Common Core, remember, you're balancing academics and flight line all at the same time, and it's a nightmare. In Blackhawks, you front load that crap in the first month, and you're on to flying from then on out. You're going to be laughing at your Apache buddies, your Chinook buddies, your C-12 buddies, who are still juggling academics and Flightline all at the same time when all you're doing is getting paid to fly. It's a great. I love how they do the Black Hawk course. It's awesome. So just like I always give you guys the breakdown in hours, in Black Hawk phase, or in contact phase of Black Hawks, you're going to get 17.1 aircraft hours and 4.5 simulator hours. And that will complete contact. And I think contact lasts for 3 weeks. Don't quote me on that, but I think it's about 3 weeks. And then, of course, you get a check ride at the end of the phase to end the phase to move on to the next phase. So the maneuvers that will be graded in contact on the check ride will be the basic VMC approach, the VMC flight maneuver, so your traffic patterns, excuse me, constant angle takeoff, roll on landing with or without aerodynamic braking. So that's new. In the 72, you did what's called run on landing because you have skids. Well, skids are for kids. You now got wheels. So you do what's called roll on landing. So roll on landing without aerodynamic braking, it feels very similar to the run on landing that you do in the Lakota, but you're on wheels and you just kind of roll it on with all 3 wheels kind of hitting at the same time, really. Obviously, your tail wheel is going to hit first, but you're not going to hold up on that tail wheel. You're just going to roll it on. And then your roll-on landing with aerodynamic braking is when you come in, you'll feel the tail wheel hit first. And as soon as you feel that tail wheel hit, and you'll get so good at this, you'll anticipate it. And as soon as that tail wheel hits, you'll cushion just slightly with a little bit of pressure on the collective, slight ass cyclic, and it will come to a wheelie. You'll be holding almost like a wheelie on your tail wheel, and you'll ride that out. And the trick is you're using the main rotor system to slow down the aircraft so that you come from doing 40 knots to slowly coming down to, say, around 10 to 5 knots, and you slowly lower the mains onto the ground, and you just pump the brakes with your pedals a few times to come to a stop. So aerodynamic braking, you're using the main rotor system to slow the aircraft down. A basic just flat roll-on landing without aerodynamic braking, that's all brakes. And as you'll begin to learn in the Black Hawk, it doesn't have the best brakes. The brakes in the Black Hawk are really designed for parking, not necessarily stopping a fast-moving Black Hawk. Obviously, it works, but aerodynamic braking is the preferred method, and you'll want to do it because it looks cool and it feels cool. The only reason you wouldn't do aerodynamic braking is if you had some malfunction that hindered you from doing it. That's pretty much the only reason I could think of that you wouldn't do it. You'll also be graded on boost off. In P1 and 2, I'm sure you guys remember SAS off. Well, in Black Hawks, it's called boost off. So boost off, the Black Hawk doesn't have any of the stability augmentation system working. So it's you're flying a pure helicopter when the boost comes off, and the controls actually get much harder to move. And you'll be in the traffic pattern. Your IP will turn off the boost, and you'll immediately feel the aircraft shoot up and get very unstable. But good thing is, the more you do it, obviously, the better you get at flying the Black Hawk with the boost off. And you'll learn tips and tricks of the trade. I'm not going to get into how to fly it with the boost off. That's what your IP's for. I'm just here to tell you that will be a graded maneuver, and obviously you'll be like, how the hell am I ever going to fly this thing with boost off? And then you'll get good at it, and by the end of contact, you'll be a pro. Level acceleration, it's optional on your contact check ride. At least whenever I went through, I remember it being optional. I did one on my check ride, and I'd say level acceleration is one of my strong suits. So it went good, but it's optional. So meaning the IP can say, hey, I want to see a level acceleration, and he can include that in your grade. Or if you're cutting it close on time, he may not want to see that. The auto rotation I know was optional whenever I went through, which is surprising, right? I did several auto rotations in my train up during contact, but it wasn't something the check IP wanted to see. And I don't really remember ever hearing any of my fellow classmates doing an auto rotation on the check ride. So it's something you do in contact, just not on the check ride. Slopes will be graded in the Blackhawk, and then lockout. So in the 72, you remember the twist grips were the throttle. Well, in the Blackhawk, you have the engine power control levers up here on the ceiling of the Blackhawk. You have two of them. And the settings for the PCLs are off, idle, fly, and lockout. So lockout would be used in a situation where you needed more power, you needed to tap into that contingency power, and it's taking the DEC or the EDECU out of the equation, which is a governor that's put on the engine. You guys have been through ground school, so you should know what that is. And you take one of the PCLs from fly to lockout, and they're grading to make sure you have the ability and the understanding of how to control the throttle when the governor is not involved, and you have it in lockout. So just to go through those real quick one more time: VMC approach and VMC flight maneuvers, constant angle takeoff, roll on landing with or without aerodynamic braking, so it's one or the other, boost off, level acceleration takeoff, auto rotation, slopes, and lockout. Those are the maneuvers you will learn in contact, and you will be graded on your contact check ride. So I'll give you my check ride story time for this video. But I'll be really quick. Honestly, it was a pretty laid-back check ride for contact. But I want to also kind of give you guys my experience going through contact. So my contact check ride was one of my most laid-back check rides in all of flight school. Had a really good assigned IP for contact. I was very lucky. I had an old-timer. Excuse me. The dude had been flying helicopters for a really long time, and he taught us a lot of crap. In fact, I feel like me and my stick buddy were far more prepared in Black Hawk phase than any other of my classmates. Now, that's not to say, my classmates did really well, but we just had a really good IP that he really dug into us every day on table talk and in the aircraft. So it was very painful going through it at times, but it paid dividends in the long run. So when it got to my contact check ride, we were well prepared for it. And we had a really laid-back IP, to be honest with you. He was really cool. And this is one thing I will say about the Black Hawk course, is one thing that I found that separates the Black Hawk course from Common Core is I felt that the IPs approached all of the students, for the most part, from a developmental standpoint, no matter if it was just a day of flying or if it was a check ride. Everything was very developmental. In Common Core, I often felt that the IPs were very confrontational. I really did. And that's one thing I love about Blackhawks is everything was a learning experience. So on this check ride, we did table talk by PPC, and for those of you who don't know what that is, your pre-computed data that you do during the pre-mission brief, we went over that, and Table Talk by PPC is when they go through and ask you stuff on your PPC, and they tie it into limitations of the Black Hawk, regs and pubs, EPs limitations, all of that stuff. They tie it in based off of the situation you have presented on your PPC. So what that looks like is, hey, what's max torque available mean? If you're predicting this is my max torque available with today's conditions, can I actually pull that? What will happen between the HMU and the EDEC-U that will prevent me from pulling that if I were to go out there and pull that? Am I breaking any Chapter 5 limitations by doing that? So that's what that looks like when you're doing a Table Talk by PPC. So that's what we did. Went pretty smooth. He didn't ask us any crazy questions that we weren't prepared for. Again, I had a really good assigned IP who tore us up on Table Talk every single day. So we were well prepared for that one. Go out to the aircraft, start doing the pre-flight. I was in the nose compartment, and the question I got for pre-flight was, he pointed to the FCC. He asked me what it was. I said it's the FCC. He asked me what it did. Of course, I answer, it controls the trim of the aircraft. He didn't really dig into that too much, and he also asked if it was FCC 1 or 2, and of course, I said 2. So, honestly, that's a pretty softball question. I thought it was pretty easy. So, I would say that it was a very laid-back check ride, needless to say. But we went out there to the stage field, and I'm not even kidding. I was done with my portion of flying in 20 minutes. I flew first that day. Stick Buddy hopped in for the second round, and he was done within 20 minutes. We were out and back to low within like 40 minutes. I'm not even kidding. I mean, it was a fast check ride. Easy day. And you guys are going to have an easy day too. You're going to study hard. You're going to learn how to fly the Black Hawk in contact phase, and it's a good phase. I will say, I'm going to go off of I'm not going to assume anything about you guys. I had to knock the dust off of myself whenever I got into contact phase. Whenever I went through, I think there was a month or month and a half gap between the last time I flew a helicopter when getting into a Black Hawk. So not only had I gone like a month and a half without flying, but I was in a completely new aircraft too. So it took some getting used to. And it's a little intimidating at first. You get in the Black Hawk, you come in for your first approach at the stage field, you fly traffic pattern, and yeah, it's not like you forget how to fly or anything like that, but it's not as smooth as I think, at least that I envisioned it. You know what I mean? So judgment's a little off. It takes a little while. So I would say it took me a good, probably solid 10 days to get back into my old groove and really feel like I was getting comfortable in the Black Hawk. I do want to make you guys aware that if you get into the Black Hawk and it's like day 3 and you're like, holy shit, did I lose it? That's common. I talked to my friends and they felt the same way as well. So that's common. Don't let it freak you out. So again, in summary, study hard for that 5 and 9. Don't freak out if you suck at flying the Black Hawk at first for the first week or 2. You'll get back to where you left off in Common Core. And yeah, enjoy contact and enjoy no academics. The next video that we cover will be MST, so the next phase of Black Hawks will be mission scenario training. And it's a fun phase, so it's got a BWS style to it. It's all mission scenario based. So I'll cover that with you guys in the next video. Until then, stay tuned and good luck.